Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Thank you for tuning in to another video. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out a lot. I just passed 2,400 subscribers, and as soon as I hit 2,500, I'm going to do a special video about a horrible gaming mistake I have made. I've done some of these videos in the past, and it's really cathartic for me to talk about these things. I did something really awful in terms of just a big mistake I made with a couple of gaming consoles. Anyway, help me get to 2,500 by sharing, telling your friends. If you have any gamer friends, tell them about the channel. I really appreciate it. So let's get to it. I recently did a video on 5 things I hate about the Nintendo NES, the vaunted mighty powerhouse, the 8-bit Nintendo Entertainment System. Obviously, I don't hate the NES. I even have a book I wrote about the console, Volume 1 of the NES Omnibus, available for pre-order now. Link below in the description. But it's not a perfect console, but to sort of balance out that episode I did, that 5 things I hate about it, I did 5 things I absolutely love about the NES. And there are many, many things I love about it, but here are 5 in particular, just sort of about the console in general, just some great things about it. So let's get to it. Number 5, 2-player simultaneous games, co-op, or you cooperate or challenge one another, thwart each other, destroy each other. I love 2-player games, couch co-op, couch competition. It's so much fun. Tournaments, all that kind of stuff. Now, obviously, there were some great 2-player, 4-player, whatever games before the NES. Warlords comes to mind for the Atari 2600. There are a number of, great simultaneous games. Atari 2600 in particular had a bunch. But the NES really carried that forward and really just almost perfected it. There are some fantastic 2-player simultaneous games that I absolutely love. Battletoads, yes, hard, yes, frustrating, but man, with 2 players, it's actually playable. I mean, it's a great game. Still tough to beat, almost impossible, but with 2 players, it makes it fun. River City Ransom, cult classic game, even better with 2 players. I've got a stack here that I love, and many more beyond that. Balloon Fight, the Joust clone that is excellent. 2-player mode. Double Dribble, duh. Sports titles are great with 2 players. But Double Dribble, I played this one so much, and I've got a great story of playing this game with my cousin that I tell in the NES Omnibus Volume 1. My favorite 2-player game on the NES, the original Mario Brothers. You can cooperate to defeat the levels, or you can sabotage one another. Just an incredible game at the arcades and a great port on the NES. Missing a few things here and there, but overall, it looks and plays great for the NES. Contra. Now, I actually prefer the solo outing on Contra. I prefer playing this by myself. Second player tends to drag me down. Not bragging, but I just got pretty good at this game, and the second player was kind of annoying, but I know a lot of people that do like playing this as a 2-player game because it is tough, and you can cooperate. Great game. Another one, Dr. Mario. A great puzzler inspired by Tetris. Fantastic 2-player split screen. Absolutely love it. So the NES really just sort of not specialized in 2-player games, but boy, it really brought them to the forefront. I mean, obviously, in the old days, consoles were packaged with 2 controllers, unlike a lot of systems today. And the NES really capitalized on 2-player games. Great console for that. Number 4, and I've talked about this before, the NES Light Gun is awesome. It's sturdy, it's durable, and it's actually retro. Light gun games were really popular in the old arcades, electromechanical games. A lot of them used guns. The original Odyssey, the Magnavox Odyssey from 1972, Ralph Baer's amazing creation for its time, had a light gun, and it's just super old school. And I like it, the ColecoVision and the Atari 5200, which the NES, came after and then improved upon in many ways. Those systems, as great as they were, and I mentioned before that they had trackballs, the NES did not. Well, the NES has a light gun. Those 2 systems do not. So give props to the NES for the light gun. I did a full episode on Hogan's Alley. Great game. It does have a flaw, which I talk about in that episode, but Hogan's Alley. Operation Wolf is a fun light gun game. And of course, the Mighty Duck Hunt, which I play on this compilation cart. And Shooting Range. Not one as you hear about as much, but pretty fun and a little more versatile than Duck Hunt. But there's a lot of great light gun games. Just check them out. Google NES light gun games, and there aren't a ton. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head how many they are, but there's a bunch of fun ones. And just in general, I find just about all of them fun because it's just fun to aim at the TV and shoot it without causing actual damage to the screen. Love me some light gun games. They're super fun, and the NES light gun is pretty accurate and it's very durable. Excellent stuff. Now the NES controller is number 3. So we got 5, excuse me. The NES controller comes in at number 3. I absolutely love this design of this controller. Now the Super Nintendo controller later on did improve upon it with curved corners, with shoulder buttons, with more buttons and all that kind of thing. But when it came out, the NES controller was revolutionary for US audiences. And for those of us that didn't play the Game & Watch games, that the D-pad was inspired by the Game & Watch games. I'd never seen Game & Watch games before I got my NES for whatever reason. Just none of my friends had them, and I just didn't see them in stores. I didn't see them as much as I was into gaming. But I absolutely love this, and it's such a, it's just so convenient, fits your hand so well, and it's got 2 buttons, action buttons, unlike the 2600's 1 button. And the 5200 controller, we all know its problems, the non-centering joystick. But the worst thing about this is it's fragile. It actually plays pretty well when it's new and still in good shape, but over time it wears out and it gets broken down. The ColecoVision controller I happen to like. I know a lot of people don't like the stubby joystick. They say it cramps their hands or it's just not that great, but I like it. But I like the NES controller quite a bit better than any controller that came before it. The Intellivision control disc, a lot of people don't like that, but most people I know like the NES controller. It works great. I think it's fantastic. So that comes in at number 3 of things I love about the NES. Number 2, the Nintendo Entertainment System started a bunch of franchises, big franchises that continue to today, like Metroid, Alone in the Dark Space, not Alone in the Dark, but you are Samus Aran, just out in the depths of outer space. You truly feel alone. You've got all these great weapons. Metroid franchise is just awesome, continued on for generations. Legend of Zelda, the first, for people that didn't play Atari's Adventure, for a lot of people it was their first sort of taste of a role-playing game, or at least an action role-playing game. Metal Gear, the classic stealth game. Dragon Warrior, another game that introduced Western audiences to RPGs. And back in the day, if you subscribed to Nintendo Power at one point, you could get Dragon Warrior for free. Castlevania, definitely one of my favorite franchises started on the NES is Castlevania series. Love Castlevania, Castlevania 3. Not so big on Castlevania 2. You may have seen one of my earlier videos, I talked about that. But Final Fantasy, holy cow, just a huge RPG series with tons of iterations on the PlayStation 2 and many other consoles. Just legendary epic franchise IP. The NES, so many big, massive, epic franchises, IPs, started on the humble NES and on the Famicom, which is, the Japanese equivalent of the NES, which came out in '83, a couple of years before the NES was test marketed in the US. So the NES/Famicom introduced so many great things, including a lot of IPs. Number 1, NES Culture. Now, the Nintendo Entertainment System, I argue that it is the most iconic video game system of all time. Now, is it the best selling? No, that would be the PlayStation 2. And just recently, the Nintendo Switch even outsold the NES. But it did sell a lot of consoles, but it's just so iconic. Nintendo Power, the classic magazine that, that a lot of people grew up reading, and for a lot of people, it was their first gaming magazine. Now, there was Electronic Games before that, Joystick Magazine before that, and I don't even think Nintendo Power is anywhere close to being the best video game magazine. It's not particularly objective at times, but it is a very colorful magazine, and it has, as far as just color and the maps and, tips and tricks and all that kind of stuff, I mean, people lived and died with Nintendo Power. Kids absolutely loved it. And, you know, I was 20 when I got my NES, so I wasn't the biggest, you know, consumer of Nintendo Power, although I did look at it and enjoy it, you know, for what it was, colorful, nice art and everything. But man, kids that grew up playing with the NES lived and died by the Nintendo Power magazine. That was their Bible. So Nintendo Power, the NES hotline where you could call in and, you know, find out how to get through levels and things. And the recent High Score documentary on Netflix had a good segment about the NES hotline, really interesting. The Power Glove and Rob the Robot, two things that were failed. The Power Glove and Rob the Robot, just miserable gaming implements, but somehow they both became super iconic and just very well known. And there was even a movie, obviously, The Wizard. Now, did you guys know they made a recent collector's edition of The Wizard? You guys might want to run out and get this. It's really neat, a lot of special features, and I love the packaging. It's just got that great 8-bit packaging, really cool. Anyway, The Wizard, bad movie, but it's a lot of fun to watch. You know, one of those so bad it's good, and it actually is good in parts, but it's just fun to watch. And even bad things about the NES, like the Power Glove, like Rob, not necessarily great gaming implements, but still iconic, still highly collected. As a matter of fact, in my collection, I don't own a Power Glove or a Rob robot, which is, I would love to have those on my shelf to display or to show you, you know, just to have for videos and things. But here's why. So back in the day, I mean, I've been game chasing since, you know, the late 70s, adding to my collection, going to garage sales, flea markets, pawn shops, the video game, you know, clearance aisle, you know, clearance bins, and the great video game crash, been adding to the collection over the years, you know, just, but I would see the Power Glove at thrift stores frequently in the 90s. I would see Rob the Robot on like a thrift town, a local thrift store. I must have seen that thing 20 times on different occasions, going to, you know, thrift stores and flea markets and everything, because, you know, I just never wanted it because both of those items I'd heard they were terrible, and I'd tested them at friends' houses and things, a little bit here and there. And I remember using the Power Glove, and it just did not work well. And Rob was just too convoluted to use. I just didn't care about him. And as cool as Rob would look on my shelf and the Power Glove, I would love to have those. And I don't want to pay collector prices. If you guys know me, you know why. I kind of don't do that, but usually. But I would love to have those in my collection. But I didn't pick them up back then when they were super cheap. You know, I'd see them for $5 or $10. They were just, nobody wanted them in the 90s. Game collecting was great then. But anyway, I'm getting way ahead, you know, off of left field, which I do from time to time, getting on a tangent. But passwords. I mean, before I played a game like Castlevania, I didn't know what passwords were. As a matter of fact, when I first started playing Castlevania, and it you know, it had a password feature, at first I was puzzled by, like, what is this password thing? So anyway, I quickly realized it's to save your progress, but, you know, very iconic, very equivalent. I mean, the NES is very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's synonymous with passwords for saving your progress. And then, you know, a little later, with games like Legend of Zelda, introduced the batteries to save your progress. So anyway, passwords, tips and tricks, secrets and surprises. Games like Super Mario Brothers and Legend of Zelda had hidden areas, secrets and surprises like no games before them. Now, yeah, there was, you know, some secrets, you know, there were, you know, hidden areas in games before and things like that, but the NES really blew that up. And with NES adventure games and platformers and things like that, you really expected, you know, secrets and surprises and lots of levels and all that thing, and NES really brought that to the forefront. The Konami code, speaking of tips and tricks, which started with Gradius and was popularized with Contra, just so iconic. I mean, an iconic tip/trick for a video game. I mean, NES, where else? Stadium events. You know, when you think about some of the most expensive games, you think of stadium events, you think of the Nintendo World Championships competition card. You think of games like that, Little Samson. So just expensive games, you think of the NES. The NES has just dominated. It's just, it has so engulfed the culture here in the US and beyond that is just, so that's why it made it to #1. The NES culture is fascinating. Let me know in the comments, what do you love about the NES? That would be awesome. I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Thank you for liking this video. Just hitting that like button Really helps us out a lot. It helps us out so much. You guys that have shared my videos and have commented on them on YouTube, I really, really appreciate that. That helps a lot too. Well, we're going to wrap it up with a little spot for Old School Gamer Magazine. I hope you'll watch that real quick and check out Old School Gamer Magazine. Great magazine that I happen to write for, but it is a lot of fun. And, you know, if you grew up reading electronic games and Nintendo Power and all that stuff, you will like it as well. So check that out, and I will see you in another video. Thanks for watching.